Hello once again, everybody, and thank you for joining me on this Tuesday, July 7th edition of Bang the Book Radio. I'm your host, Adam Burke. We got one guest here on today's show. That is Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. We're going to talk about the Workday Charity Open at Muirfield Village, a very interesting handicap, not only for this week, but next week as well on the same course for the Memorial. We'll tell you what to watch for here. Then, of course, we'll reconvene next week to talk about the Memorial. NASCAR is at Kentucky Speedway. That's the Quaker State 400, so we'll discuss that. Also talk a little bit of horse racing stuff for you here with a couple of big events this week, and then maybe take a look at the NHL with the return-to-play date now set for August 1st. We'll be covering that over at bangthebook.com, along with our continued coverage of golf, NASCAR, UFC 251 coming up this weekend. We'll have a preview for that here either today or tomorrow over at the website. Finally starting to get back into some things here, so we got a lot to talk about over at the website and right here on the shows as well. Finally, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio, presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB and the number 200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook, 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. Like I said, one guest on the show today, that is Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. Brian, how's it going today, man?
All right, Adam. How you doing, kid?
I'm doing well. I wish I was having the kind of morning that Patrick Mahomes is having, though.
Yeah, he's having a morning. No getting around that.
And that may not be enough money for him, based on some of the numbers that are being thrown around out there. We'll be able to hopefully talk a lot of football here in the coming weeks. Hopefully everything kind of comes together with that. I guess let's go ahead and talk about this. Just kind of change it up a little bit here. Let's talk some NHL, because you're obviously a hockey guy. We talk a lot of hockey here on the shows. We've got that start date set for August 1st. Toronto and Edmonton appear to be the cities. It seems like things are going better for the NHL right now than they are for Major League Baseball and the NBA.
I think the NHL's done a terrific job. I think, obviously horse racing, NASCAR, and golf, I think, have done a terrific job of getting this up and running and the way they've managed things. And before they start, I think the NHL, I don't think it's even close, has seemed to have done a lot more due diligence and seemed better prepared to give it a shot. I still think there are, daunting hurdles. But on the way in, I think now they've got 35 players out of 1,400, since this thing started, and they seem to be managing it quite well. I mean, it still is going to remain an interesting thing when they go to the bubble, how that all pans out. It just seems like there's just no way of avoiding this thing, that at some point someone gets it. But the Armageddon scenario is that, a guy gets it the morning of game 2, and then 5 guys get it the morning of game 3. But it seems like they've done the yeoman's work here to be ready to pull this off.
Well, and it'll be interesting to see, how things go as testing continues to get ramped up and all of that. But we've seen it with Major League Baseball here, where there were some problems in the chain of, dealing with FedEx on a holiday weekend, getting everything through the lab that they've picked. Seems like now Major League Baseball is going to try to work in a second lab to process these tests and, sort of spread out all the logistics and everything like that. And the nice thing for the NHL now is that, and really for the NBA too, they can kind of learn from what's going on with Major League Baseball, kind of make some adjustments, things of that sort. One thing that I do find very interesting about the NHL here so far, not to get into any sort of political discussion regarding it or anything like that, but we've already seen a handful of baseball players opt out. More are going to. Several players have pregnant wives and girlfriends and all that kind of thing. We've seen some players already opt out in the NBA. Not hearing a whole lot of chatter about the NHL players opting out to this point.
Well, we'll see. And they basically have come to an agreement on the CBA and the protocols, and it's on the table right now. And the NHLPA, the executive committee, whatever they call it, they're submitting it to the full body, and then the players are going to vote. So it's got to be ratified. But once it's ratified, there's then a 72-hour window where players can opt out, and it's in writing. Players can opt out, and they don't have to give a reason why. They choose not to play with no repercussions. I mean, they've already been paid for the season. So it's all about. And then there's the hockey culture and that thing. But I don't see anybody kind of holding against a guy saying you bailed on us, in a pandemic. So it will be interesting. I think there'll be some. The number, it doesn't seem like there's any big voice out there that's saying I've got like a Mike Trout. There are going to be some guys. I think it'll be maybe aging veterans. They could say, "Oh, it's my last kick at winning the cup," or they're on the back end of their career going, I don't want to do this. I'm not going to risk it when I'm basically at the tail end of my career. But the other thing is, you could have a wife with asthma or a baby on the way, just like Mike Trout. I think sports mirrors society. There are going to be guys that are going to opt out. I just don't know how many or how big the names would be.
Well, we'll definitely talk more about it here as we get closer to the start date there on August 1st. But let's head to my home state here of Ohio, the 2020 Workday Charity Open. And this is very interesting. We've had this discussion a little bit with regards to NASCAR of back-to-back races on the same track, kind of looking for things that you can use, from the first race to sort of handicap the second race. Well, here we've got back-to-back golf tournaments at Muirfield Village, Jack Nicklaus's home course in Dublin, a suburb of Columbus. The Workday Charity Open, the purse is about $3 million lighter for this event than it is for the Memorial next week. But still, 7 of the top 15 from the official World Golf Ranking are on hand, again, barring any positive tests or any withdrawals going into the tournament here. But, what's really interesting here about this one is that I want to see how this course plays this week, because you have to think that next week they've got to do something to make things a little bit tougher for a more signature, more high-profile event like the Memorial.
No, that's a great point, because I think you sit here and say, okay, let's watch this. I think the one thing you could watch this tournament and see maybe somebody that finds a groove or the light bulb goes off on the weekend where their ball striking and their putting improves. But to just say, oh, well, they did this, and now at the Memorial it's going to work too, is not necessarily the case. And you could almost make the case too, go completely the other way, that if you're playing well on this thing and then they massively changed the setup on the same course, those adjustments that guys make from this week to next could be confusing, and guys coming off the shelf next week could actually have an advantage. I'm not saying that's the case, but you can watch this weekend and apply it towards next weekend. But I would certainly envision the rough would be higher. My best guess is they probably, this week, the scores would be significantly lower than the Memorial will be. I'm guessing that the setup here, the rough might be low, and then they just start growing this thing during this tournament leading into next week.
Well, it's certainly not as hot around here as it is where you are. I saw, it's easy triple digits for you, but we've not gotten a whole lot of rain here lately at all whatsoever. It's been very, very hot, kind of humid, not as humid as we've had for past summers. So they're going to have to put a ton of water on this course between, this week and next week. So I think this week, the rough will be cut a little bit shorter. The greens should be very, very fast, very dried out, unless they're just completely saturating them before the morning rounds. Justin Thomas, your plus 950 favorite. John Rahm, about 12-1. Same thing for Patrick Cantlay. Same area for Brooks Koepka as well. Hideki Matsuyama's around 15-1, and I've seen a lot of people really like Hideki Matsuyama this week. Xander Schauffele, 18. Fowler and Rose, 20 or so. Reed and Hovland, 22. And, this is a course, Brian, where, this is usually in pristine shape. It's a beautiful course. A lot of people love it. Hazards around all the greens. Unlike the last few tournaments we've seen, this isn't really a putting tournament. This is a tournament where you've got to be accurate with your approach shots. And I think that's why guys like Matsuyama, who generally isn't a very good putter, are getting some love. Ricky Fowler's getting a little bit of love out there too. And a guy that I really like this week who does have problems with the putter, Victor Hovland. I think this is the week, this is the right kind of setup for a guy like him.
Yeah, among the favorites, 3 of the 6 of them have won. Cantley, Matsuyama, and, Rose is in that loop at 22-1, have won the Memorial. So they've got good positive vibes coming to this course. Of the favorites, I'm still all about Brooks Koepka. I'm always price hunting, and before the Travelers, I thought Koepka was going to walk in there and win for fun, and that his caddy tested positive. Now, the one thing about Koepka was throughout the whole shutdown, this guy talked about he put in all the work, and so I can't imagine he was that close to having his game ready to just explode that I can't imagine he's done anything in the 2 weeks he's been away other than work. So on that premise alone, of the favorites, I'm still all about Brooks Koepka. Then, the Bryson DeChambeau thing is a discussion for another day. He's not playing. But clearly, he's taking it to the next level. But what you're seeing is that, being 60 yards from the green in thick rough can be more advantageous than being 160 yards away in the middle of the fairway. And if DeChambeau ever gets his wedge dialed in, it may not be a fair fight. That's the way he's been playing. And now that he's won, look out. In fact, he's been bet down to the favorite for the Masters, which is, you think about it, it's almost like Bubba Watson there. Bubba Watson, you don't trust Bubba Watson anywhere, but you got to look at him at the Masters because this course is set up for a left-hander with length. But if you think of DeChambeau when we get to the Masters, he's going to hit driver over the trees on 13. He's going to have an 8-iron in. And other guys are, hitting 3 irons over Rays Creek. So length matters. So to that end, and a guy that hasn't played, and we're getting opportunities like this, and again, many great unknowns, but a guy that has not played once since they've returned to play is J.B. Holmes. And he's 150-1. Yeah, and he hits it long, and he shows up at big, tough courses. And it's a crazy price, and it's a bit of a guessing game. But I do think that's a bit of an overlay. And then the one I just can't get away from, if we're going to sit here and how much time we spent last week talking about a guy like Brian Stewart, in Detroit, and he played well, and that home course knowledge, his game has not been that good, and health has always been his issue. But Jason Day is 70-1. He's a member here. He lives 19 minutes from this course. It hasn't really reaped any rewards to this point, but he moved there in 2017. Okay, so believe me, he's got a lot more rounds in at Muirfield Village in the last 3-4 years, to the point, if you're going to play, we know Webb Simpson's prowess in the Carolinas, and it worked again, and Stewart played really well in Detroit, and Jason Day can roll the rock. If he really knows this course, and I know it's been a while, but I just think 70-1 is a pretty big overlay on Jason Day.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I like Jason Day here, too, for that reason. As you mentioned, Columbus, kind of his adopted home. His wife is from there. So, he's a guy that's obviously very familiar with the area, as you mentioned. Another one, not necessarily as high profile of a player, but a guy playing really well over the last couple of weeks here. I believe a 4th and a 6th for him is Ryan Armour, who actually played at Ohio State. Now, he's in his mid-40s, so it's not like he was, recently at Ohio State. But 45 birdies against 14 bogeys and a double his last 2 events. And the thing you look for at this course, as I mentioned, this is not really a course where you have to putt all that well to win. It helps if you do. But this is a strokes gained approach course because, like I just said, a lot of these greens have hazards. A lot of greenside bunkers, several holes with greenside water, stuff like that. So that's why we're seeing prices come down on a guy like Matsuyama, who is a great ball striker. Why we're seeing a price go down on a guy like Russell Henley, who's been very good strokes gained approach of late, played well here last year. Max Homa is another one that doesn't putt overly well week in and week out, but a pretty good ball striker, good on approach. He's come down from triple digits to about 70-1 here. So you're kind of getting a profile of some of the players that people like this week, and a lot of them are guys that hit it well on approach. You'll get Benny on 4 straight top 15 finishes here. That guy can't putt to save his life most weeks, but he plays really well at this course. And again, that was for the Memorial, which is probably going to play a little bit tougher here than this one. I'll throw out a couple of other names for you here. I think this is a week to take a look at Corey Connors. He's not a great putter, but good ball striker. This is a ball striking course. He's at 66-1, not a bad play there. Henrik Norlander, he's 125-1, very, very dialed in last week in terms of strokes gained on approach. He's top 80 in strokes gained off the tee, top 80 in strokes gained on approach. He's not a bad look at a big number. And one other one here who played pretty well last week, once again had some issues with the putter. Hudson Swafford's 200-1. Another approach guy who plays really well with the irons. And I think that's why we see a price going down like Morikawa this week. He's down from 35 to 25 or so. That's what this course is. It's about hitting it to the green when you're supposed to. If you got a 2-putt, that's fine. But too many guys get involved with the hazards here and really hurt themselves. You want to find guys that aren't going to put it in the bunker or the water.
Yeah, it's funny. I was, as you said, Corey Connors. I was looking Corey Connors up, ball striking. He's absolutely a guy I think you could take a long, hard look at because he's just been hitting the hell out of it and hitting it straight. And I'm looking up a guy as we speak here, and we'll see. We shall see here. If memory serves, I believe hasn't Rory Sabatini, didn't he contend here one year? I think Rory Sabatini's ball striking is really good. I think it was, yeah, they were. I just saw it a few weeks ago. It was what Tiger was a Tiger winning at Memorial, and Sabatini was right there. Might have finished second. That was maybe a few years ago. But Sabatini's game is actually not in that bad a shape, and I think he plays well here. He was 40.
Sabatini's a guy too. Yeah, he was. He was in the 60-1 range, stuff like that. Now all of a sudden, kind of an afterthought at 100-1. Again, you talk about kind of price hunting and looking for, as you don't like to say, but value. Sabatini's prices have gone up a little bit here because he hasn't played as well of late. But that's a guy second all the way back in 2012 here at this event. 2012.
I knew I had just watched this. It was during the shutdown, and they showed Tiger's win. That was the one when Tiger had the miracle chip in on 16. But Sabatini was the one that was, right there going toe-to-toe, and Tiger came from off the pace. And Sabatini, tee to green, was the best player that day. Tiger had the miracle chip in. Anyway, that's a while back, but I think Sabatini's form is pretty good. And, the range ball, the yellow ball drives me nuts. But, I take a look at that. But, again, to me, a lot of this, when we talk about this every week, is you just sit here and you look at the overlays. And, and the problem is one guy wins a tournament. To pick the winner is the hard thing. But if you sit there and you're telling me I got Jason Day 70-1 and Ricky Fowler's 30-1, I'm playing Jason Day in that matchup. You look at this in the prices that are offered. Now, it is one of the major rubs and one of my few beefs about Las Vegas. And I just, for the life of me, I just can't understand why this hasn't been done. And they don't offer top 5. And it drives me absolutely insane. I mean, you come out of the woodwork and, get a run for your money with a guy that's 225-1 and he finishes 4th. You're going, oh, that was exciting. I got a run for my money. But if a guy's 200-1 and finishes 4th, he should be offered at 40 or 50-1 to finish in the top 5. And my point is, it's like horse racing. More people would win a little more often and churn it back in. I think it's in the book's best interest to offer that.
No, I totally agree. I get on Circa or get on some of your sportsbook directors and
buddy, I've been doing it for 10 years. I've been doing it for 10 years.
I mean, why don't they do it?
It's gaming. They have to. I guess they have to. submit to gaming that they want to do it. And then I don't understand with the walls that have come down in terms of, like odds to be the MVP in the Super Bowl, where, that's up and running now, where you used to be able to not put a bet out on anything that required a vote. This is nothing more than simple math. I don't know. I've begged. I've talked to a lot of the guys about it, and and the crazy thing is now with as little as is going on now, I think it would behoove them to do it because I think many more people would get involved, and the pot would be bigger. And I think sports like golf, we've talked about it, golf and NASCAR and horse racing on the back end of this nonsense are going to be small winners in that people that never look cross-eyed at these sports got involved, maybe had a good moment or two, enjoyed it, and will now start to pay attention to it moving forward. So if that indeed is the case and you're looking for ways to make money and put more offerings up because there's so few things going on, putting a different index up, a new index up like that would do nothing but create a whole nother pool.
One last thing real quickly here before we move over to the NASCAR side. First European Tour event since early March. The last one, the Qatar Masters. The Austrian Open here this week. Juice Lawton is your favorite, about 7-1 over there across the pond. Back-to-back events in Austria. I believe they're going to be played on different courses, though. I could be wrong with that, but it looks like they actually are. But in any event, the European Tour is back here this week, so there's another market for golf fans if they want to dive in and take a look at that one. But let's head on to Kentucky here. Just move one state south and talk about the Quaker State 400. And by the way, again, possibly another wagering angle here this week. The Xfinity Series running back-to-back days, Thursday and Friday. Shady Rays 200, then the Alsco 300. So back-to-back days for the Xfinity Series down in Kentucky. So maybe you can find some betting angles from that. But the Cup Series race, the Quaker State 400, Harvick's your plus 350 favorite. Elliott and Hamlin, both 5-1. Kyle Busch was the second favorite, now the fourth choice at plus 750. Truex about 10-1. Keselowski and Logano, the Penske teammates, 12-1. What are you thinking here about the mile-and-a-half track in Sparta, Kentucky?
Yeah, this is a bit of an odd one. I think that the odd story is that Harvick has not fared well here. Hard to leave him out of anything, and Hamlin's just the tough luck that's there. Of all the NASCAR races, this one coming up would be one I'd be more inclined to be doing something along matchups and group matchups and read a little more during the week about setup and just hear what they've got to say. This is an odd dynamic, but Truex has good form here. He is a snake bit. Truex has just got all kinds of problems right now, but he's had good success here.
Yeah, you look at the guys that have had success here. You start with Kyle Busch, 7 top 5 finishes in 9 races. He's led 621 of 2,412 laps he's been out there for, so that's a little better than 25% of the laps. He's wound up leading at this track. Keselowski's got 3 wins, 4 top 5s. Truex a couple of wins back-to-back in 17 and 18. I actually went to this race in 2016 with my dad, and they had just paved the track a few months prior. They had given them a different rules package. Keselowski wound up winning that race, almost ran out of gas in the process. But there were a lot of cautions in that race on the slippery track. The next year, there were quite a few cautions. Then in 2018, there were only 4 cautions for the whole race that Truex won. Then last year, I believe there were 7 cautions. So generally speaking, this is a pretty clean race. You get out in front and you probably win this thing. So you kind of want to look for guys that start really well, kind of the stage 1 winner types of guys.
Yeah, I look forward to the race. The Xfinity race actually is the one. If you that Brickyard race where they were on the road course on Saturday was one of the best races you'll ever see. There was a lot of drama. The Xfinity races have been really good. And you could throw a blanket over 3-4 guys. And I'll throw one at you. There's so little going on, and the news is so nauseating that last night I actually watched the Formula One race over in Austria, and it was terrific. and they're competing again this week on the same track. So we saw that with NASCAR. Now we're seeing this in Formula One. Well, Lewis Hamilton is odds on. He's 5-6. And frankly, I think, he should win. His teammate, Valerie Bottas, at 5-2, won the first event. And they had a 10-second lead. And throughout the course of this whole thing where Hamilton's there pressing him like he's going to pass him, their pit crew, and it's funny when you check in onto their mic and they say, let's listen in, and you can actually hear them. The NASCAR stuff, I can't understand what they're saying. But they were having gearbox issues where they were telling these guys, you got to protect the car. And sure enough, there were 3 or 4 cars. One, a tire come off, but 3 of them just had power outages and gearbox issues. This must be a really tough track. Anyway, Lewis Hamilton, after the one restart with the safety car out, this kid, Alexander Albon, who's 25-1, he's fourth choice, and he's 25-1. I mean, I think Hamilton, can maybe name the score here. But the bet is that there's issues with this track, and mechanical issues were a real large part of this. And Lewis Hamilton actually finished second in the race. But with about 15 laps to go, this Alexander Albon kid, he's a kid, was passing Lewis Hamilton for second. And the way he was going, I think he was going to win the race. And as he got just past Lewis Hamilton, Hamilton just tweaked his tire a little bit and spun the kid out. It was like a NASCAR move. Well, about 5 laps later, the Formula One issues a 5-second penalty to Hamilton. So Hamilton actually finished second in the race, but with the 5-second penalty, got knocked off the podium. But the point was, had he not done that, I think this Alexander Albon kid had a real chance to run down Bottas to win the race. So at 25-1, I think he's worth a play here. If the mechanical thing is a thing, but I mean he wasn't just out there. He was going for the win and looked like he had a shot to be. So I watched it. I'm going to take a little flyer and watch it again this weekend. I think Hamilton wins by the length of the stretch. But if something's wrong with the car, I think this Albon kid at 25-1 is a ridiculous number. In fact, he's 25-1. And the guy that actually finished second, Charles Leclerc, is 40-1. So a guy that finished out of the race, they're telling you something here. He's 25-1, and the Ferrari guy that actually finished second is 40-1. I think that's it's a balloon number. I mean, for the fourth choice in a race to be 25-1, it's worth a small flyer. Give you something to watch.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm actually seeing 39-1 out there at 5 dimes. So, Ken, a lot of interesting prices out there for Formula One, and it is a very top-heavy racing circuit generally, but Austria is weird, and I wrote a preview about this where for some reason Lewis Hamilton just doesn't fare well here, and he's easily the best driver in F1 by far. I mean, it's really not that close, but he can't win here for some reason. So there is something to what you just said about maybe this course is just kind of weird. Maybe it's hell on the car, something like that. So, yeah, maybe there are some opportunities to take some long-distance shots here. With
35 laps to go in a 71-lap race, and these two cars well clear, they're telling them, protect the car, don't hit the bumps, don't cut the corners, and they basically were telling Hamilton to not pass his teammate. And I don't know what they'd have done at the tail end. At the tail end, Hamilton couldn't get by his teammate, but I think they were using him more as a buffer for to make sure he won the race. Anyway, it's more that if both of those cars with 30 laps to go, they were worried they were going to make it, and they both made it, but there were breakdowns all over the place. I'm just saying this kid was coming like hell on wheels, and Hamilton spun him out. And, if you didn't watch the race, you wouldn't think anything of it. But, I think this kid I think he had a real shot to win the race. What do I know about Formula One? I'm just saying, I watched it, and I'm, going to take a little flyer on it. We got a pretty busy week in horse racing here, and this is how we'll wrap up this podcast with Brian. We've got the Indiana Derby coming up here actually tomorrow. So a midweek Grade 3 race.
The favorite is Winning Impression for Dallas Stewart and Julian Leparoux. Major Fed is the second favorite at 7-2. That's Greg Foley and James Graham. Shared Sense, the third favorite, Brad Cox and Florent Giroux. Actually, we don't have anybody longer than 20-1 in that Indiana Derby 10-horse field at Indiana Grand tomorrow. And then on Saturday, the rescheduled Bluegrass Stakes at Keeneland, part of the July meet, which I believe started today or maybe starts tomorrow there at Keeneland. That could be a very interesting prep race here in advance of the Kentucky Derby and the other Triple Crown race, the Preakness, that we're still waiting on. But two pretty big races here this week, Brian. The Haskell coming up July 18th at Monmouth Park. Pretty good month of horse racing here on the horizon.
Yeah, and I think the thing you're going to watch here, the only thing about horse racing that's been skewed is the juggled Triple Crown, right? And that's a big deal. I think the Derby is going to be really interesting. I think there could be something wacko happen in the Kentucky Derby. That being said, all the tracks are starting to get up to speed. The marquee stuff that's going to be coming up, we just saw like at Belmont this past weekend. They had 4 stakes races. One of them was the Met Mile, and that was a win, and you're in the Breeders' Cup mile. So a lot of these big Breeders' Cup win and you're in races are coming up. And you mentioned the Haskell and the Bluegrass name races. But, again, in a quirky season with an odd dynamic going on about what's this 3-year-old crop all about, where Baffert's 2 horses were dominant and they're both out. Something wacko could happen. I know Tiz the Law looks really good today. I don't know what he looks like when they get to Churchill Downs in November. But the older horses and these turf races and things of that nature, there's going to be some exceptional races coming up. And watch for those, the Breeders' Cup winning your in races.
I'll put together a preview over at bangthebook.com here today for the Indiana Derby, and later in the week I'll put together something for the Bluegrass as well once we get the post-draw and I get my hands on the past performances and all that. But we'll keep covering horse racing for you here at bangthebook.com as well. Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. Brian, how can people check out those 2 shows of yours?
Oh, by the way, I was just going to say, watch at Keeneland. I'm just making a mental note for myself. If memory serves, the spring meet or when they were racing there, speed was king. I mean, there was a real bias at the track. So, take a look at the first day or 2 of the races at Keeneland and watch and see if it's a fair track. But, boy, a lot of times, when you get a new meet opening up, if you're seeing anything that's just, cheap horses get to the front and keep going, start factoring that in and take advantage of the bias. The key is to identify it early on.
Well, yeah, good notes there to be sure. Again, you always talk about filing those little things away, some horses that maybe had a bad trip that you want to bet on in their next race, stuff like that. All those things very important to be sure for horse racing. But, we talked a little bit of NHL at the top of the show. You talk NHL every day on Vegas Hockey Hotline, and you got a lot to talk about with the sportsbook directors on Sportsbook Radio as well.
Yeah, it's starting to get there, so we're there noon to 2, kshp.com. There's a listen live function. Shows are archived at sportsbookradio.com. It's always great fun, and we're there noon to 2 Pacific time, and I put all my stuff out on my Twitter at Brian Blessing. Got a golf podcast I do with Cam Stewart. We do a horse racing podcast heading into the weekend, so check out my Twitter at Brian Blessing. A lot of good stuff there. We try.
Are you bringing back the hockey betting podcast too?
Never went away.
Oh,
no,
okay.
we do every. It was. I guess what were we doing? We were doing 3 days a week during the season. We're doing one a week, and so the hockey betting podcast is there. Yes, and pretty soon we'll start diving into numbers on the series that are coming up. It's been mostly the news wrapped around it. I mean, nothing's changed. Of the first round or the play-in series, I like Winnipeg over Calgary. I think Hellebuck gives them a decided edge. And I'm intrigued by Columbus against the Leafs at a big plus price. I think a keep it simple, stupid approach could pay dividends for Columbus against Toronto. So we'll start diving into the matchups a little more.
Yeah, we'll start doing that a little bit more here on our segments with Brian Blessing. Again, make sure you follow him on Twitter at Brian Blessing. Brian, appreciate your time as always, man. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
All right, Adam. Have a good week, kid.
There you go. There's Brian Blessing, once again, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline, sportsbookradio.com, kshp.com, and on Twitter at Brian Blessing. Coming up on Thursday, new edition of the Bettor's Box, talking 5 and fly for the AL West. 5 minutes on the 5 teams there, and some schedule analysis for you as well, with the MLB schedule getting released here this past Monday. That'll do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and I will talk to you again on Thursday.